Pastor Steve filming on location in Kings County, Nova Scotia. I'm not going to tell you just where I am so that you can see if you can guess. As you look at this road beside me, you can see that the road is in pretty hard shape. And that's actually why we chose this location. It reminded me when I was a kid. 13 years old, my parents moved to the country from the city of Moncton to just outside. Any of you who have been to Magic Mountain, it was just beneath Lutz Mountain where I grew up, in a place that the farmers used to call Skunks Hollow. The actual name of the road was Zack Road, named after Zachariah Lutz. When we first moved out there, my dad bought a piece of a farm and there weren't very many houses around. The road wasn't paved and it was dirt like this. And I can remember in the spring of the year when the frost would come up through the road, and with cars continuing to travel on it, the road had great big ruts like what you see here today. Sometimes those ruts were so severe that the cars would bottom out. And I can remember in the first couple of years that we lived there that it got so bad that my dad had to park the car way at the end of the road and walk in. As I recall, it was about 3/4 of a mile. We could see the top of the road where Dad left the car, and when we looked out and saw Dad walking, he looked like a little ant from that far off. We used to get the binoculars and we would look at him and we would follow until the road went down in a dip and we'd lose sight. And in the road there was a large 90-degree angle, and if we went outside we could see Dad walking up the road. Now I really can't remember, but I suspect that there were times that we ran out of the yard and down the road and met Dad as he was walking home. And there are probably times that we would carry his lunchbox home with him and chat on the way. We so look forward to the time my dad came home because that's when stuff happened. I can remember my dad would go through the door and he would embrace my mom and they would tell how each other's day went. And then we would have supper, and then after that we got to do stuff. We got to go, and I remember times of playing a catch with my dad in the front yard, throwing a ball back and forth, and we would do that until he would say, "Stephen, my arm's so tired, I can't throw anymore." There were other times when we stacked wood, or we had building projects, or we would go to the hardware store, and we just had fun, and we did some stuff together. I wonder if that was a little bit what it was like in the first century and even before. We're told stories that when the king would lead his army out to battle, he would take the men with him, and the rest of the city, the wives and the children, would wait with anticipation for the men to come back. And oftentimes when the king came back, the king would be riding on a donkey. And the people would have a sense of expectancy when the king was going to come, because oftentimes there was a running courier who would come ahead. In fact, I was reading a story just the other day of how people believe that the marathons actually started. A fellow by the name of Phidippides in 490 BC had witnessed the Greeks winning the war, and he ran from where the Greeks defeated the Persians in Marathon all the way back to Athens. As you might guess, it was 26.2 miles in distance, the exact length of today's marathon. And he went back to say that the Greeks had won the war, and then the whole city would have moved out and wandered off toward the king as he brought the army back into the city, and stuff happened. They would have had a big party. You know, that's what it would have been like in the first century. So Jesus, he announces to the disciples and tells them to go get a donkey, that he's going to ride it into Jerusalem. And people took off their cloaks and threw them on the ground, and they cut down palm branches and they put them, and Jesus rode over them. The people, they waved their palm branches and they yelled, Hosanna, which meant save us. They were expecting stuff to happen because Jesus was going to be their Messiah, their great hope. We live in a time when we're looking for something to hope in. We turn on our news and we hear gloom and doom about COVID-19. We listen for some good news in the midst of all of the bad. We like to hear the feel-good stories because we know that there's so much sadness. In the midst of all that, we remember that our hope is in the Lord and that it's Jesus that we need to trust in. It's Him that will fortify us and carry us through. Because the King is here, stuff happens. He will not abandon us. And we will survive this crisis, and we will be better